Okay, here we are again. This video is in reference to the proposed expansion to Camp Grayling. This is the largest National Guard base in the United States, or camp, whatever you want to call it. And they are proposing that they expand their footprint from 148,000 acres to add an additional 162,000 acres. This would raise their footprint to 480 square miles, most of this being public state land that is leased from the DNR. This video is going to be more focused on the concern people have had about the intent to sublease these lands to private entities. Most of these would be companies who want to test and trial new technology, research and development, basically try out their new stuff in a military training playground. I don't know another word for it, training area. But basically it's our public state land that they want to use for this. A lot of the reference to this has come from an article. It was in D Business magazine. I'm going to be looking away to reference it. The May-June 2022 article, pages 40 through 43. In this article, several military representatives are referring to what they have created by kind of joining forces with all the different bases in Michigan. There are 4, and they call it the National All-Domain Warfighting Center. And they want to unite all the different capabilities to allow for all-domain training. So air, land, water, space, they want to be able to do it all, which makes sense. And they have been operating this way for about a year and a half based on this article. What concerns people here isn't that they have joined forces to do a more comprehensive training. It's the intention to market that as almost as a commodity. So in this article, there are several references to allowing testing to be done on the lands, opening it up for civilian geared businesses, also military, but it does reference more civilian targeted technologies. Specifically, it references that they want to take all the separate entities, put it into one brand, and present it to the Michigan and national market as a resource that can be harvested. It's kind of an odd term when the training they do actually does damage to the land. It destroys it. So there is another reference in this article that says these areas have been owned and operated as one under Michigan's National Guard. And the quote from one of the generals says, "Those 2 words are very key, own and operate." And in this, it referenced the 148,000 acres of ground maneuver space at Camp Grayling, the restricted airspaces at the other 3 bases, and it says that when you combine all these things together on the airspace side and see how it overlaps with the ground maneuver space, we have tremendous capability here in Michigan, which we do. There's a lot of space here. There are a lot of joint training maneuvers here, and it is something we're all proud to have here, but it's already large enough. References some things that were a surprise to local residents to know they've built, underground tunnels to mimic what you would see in a suburban environment, things like that we didn't know that they had done. So that was a little bit of a surprise. But there is another reference to how this has been marketed. It sounds like in the past they didn't market us as a commodity, our public lands that they have leased, but now they are. So it says now that they have exposed the business side of the military testing and research world, to our capabilities and the amount of space they had. He said, this is a quote from the article, ever since we unveiled NADWC, my phone has been ringing off the hook with private industry trying to get into this space. And the advantage is that we have a lot of availability and a lot of land for folks to come out here and play. Now, that is a big concern for local residents. If there's plenty of room, why do they need more? Especially if they're leasing it, subleasing it to these private companies. Another quote here is references a different military representative, but he says there's still plenty of room for more interest, and that, referring to Camp Grayling, they're nowhere near the point of having to turn people away because of how much land there is to support demands. And then it goes on to reference specific companies and groups that are interested in coming here to test on our lands. Now, at the Lovell's Township public input session, when asked about this subleasing and the testing that would be done on these lands, Colonel Myers was very explicit in stating that this would not be something that he would reference when talking about the lands up here at Camp Grayling, that these private parties, private entities that want to do testing would be more in the southeast region of the state, I believe. That's what he said. So not up north. It was his response. Yet he very explicitly marketed us in this article. So this is where a lot of our concerns about subleasing has come from. I really am disappointed that there's no restriction on subleasing in the leases that are in place between the Michigan National Guard and the Michigan DNR. I did have an opportunity to ask the DNR representative about leases. I wanted to know if in the history of the leases between the Michigan DNR and the Michigan National Guard, if one had ever been terminated for violation. And the answer to that was not to his knowledge. And I think that's a big concern, because he referenced at the Kirtland meeting that was held, there were several instances of times where there have been violations. There have been young tree stands that were cut. So these are freshly planted areas of young trees that we need to have in the environment for good forestry management. There have been areas where they have left concertina wire, if I'm saying that correctly, basically rounded bales of barbed wire laying out in the woods. They have put in new roads where they didn't belong. They have blocked off areas that weren't supposed to be restricted. And it results in him going to the camp and having a talk with the commander. But nothing is ever done from a lease perspective. So even though these leases are called long-term for 100 years and short-term for 20 years, they are permanent. They have never terminated one, even when there have been violations. So I will share a link to this article in the description of this video, and I invite anyone who's curious, please read it. I covered very little of what they're talking about. I covered the key points that make you wonder if this isn't why they're all of a sudden asking for another 162,000 acres. They want 250 more square miles. And it seems kind of coincidental that this is all of a sudden being proposed at the same time that they are marketing us as a commodity, as a training area, proving grounds, whatever you want to call it, somewhere for them to go play with their new technology. And they did use those words, play. There's plenty of room to play. Well, if there's plenty of room to play, there should be plenty of room for our National Guard to do the training they need. Please share. These articles or videos make me very nervous. Please make them worth my time. Thank you. Have a great day.